Hi everyone, it's Marlon here from FireBootCamp, and I'm here today with a great interview, which I'm pretty excited about. I'm interviewing Jonathan Lau from switchup.org, and Jonathan runs a website that helps potential bootcamp students choose the right bootcamp for them. So Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and hope to share my information with you.
Yeah, and we've had a brief chat before, and I'm really excited about what we're about to share because I just think, Jonathan, that there are a lot of people out there looking to join a boot camp, and Fire Bootcamp is one of many, but there's many out there that have different flavors and different types and different teaching environments, and I think you have a relatively good understanding of what's out there. So hopefully in the next 40 minutes, you can help us navigate that landscape. But before we do, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing the last few years?
Definitely. I used to work as a data scientist for a couple of years after graduating from MIT with a degree in civil engineering. And I worked out in Boston at a consulting firm for a while. And then I really decided that my passion was in programming and I wanted to pursue a software career. And at the time, I had two options. I could have gone to graduate school and gotten a master's degree, or I could go to a boot camp, which was only 10 weeks long. And boot camps back then were not very popular yet and not very well established. So I wasn't quite sure which one to choose, but it was so much more cheaper and so much shorter that I decided to go for it. And so I attended a boot camp out in Boston, in Ruby on Rails particularly. And for 10 weeks, I was immersed in this program, after which I got a really great job at a tech startup, doing software engineering, doing Rails development at a company called Visible Measures, which is a late-stage startup in Boston. And I had a great time there. And a couple of months into my new job, I realized that the industry of boot camps had a lot of potential. It had gotten me such a great job in such a short period of time that I was really quite impressed with the amount of stuff that I'd learned and the amount of stuff that my fellow students have learned in that short amount of time. And that really got me into the whole boot camp movement.
And what was that experience like, Jonathan, of going to a boot camp for 12 weeks and working through all that coursework?
Well, it was definitely unlike anything else. For 6 weeks prior to the boot camp, I was doing part-time pre-work and preparing for the boot camp. Then during the boot camp, it was very intensive. Every day, 9 to 9, you just sit there and you code, and you code, and you learn, and you do project assignments. So it's very intensive, and it was a very, I'd say, stressful period to try to switch careers from being a data scientist to being a software engineer. And there was a lot of stuff to learn. But overall, I think I had a great time. I went up the learning curve much faster than I would have on my own. So I really believe that immersive learning has the potential to help upgrade the skill set of our workforce.
Yeah. I mean, look, we've seen that time and time again, and we'll get into that a bit later. But moving on from your experience to maybe some of the people out there who are looking at joining a boot camp, when you look at the list of boot camps out there that they can join, there's a lot of them. And what I want to talk about is some of the challenges that a potential student might find when they're trying to select a boot camp over the next few weeks.
Sure, there are definitely lots of challenges with finding the right boot camp. I think the first thing that comes to mind is deciding what type of developer do you want to be. Do you want to be a front-end developer, a back-end developer, or more of a UI UX designer? And these are three very different career paths and lead you to different jobs. And that's the first question that you have to ask yourself is, what are you more passionate about? Are you more of a visual person? Are you more of a problem analytical person? Or are you a bit of both and you want to kind of bridge the gap between back-end and front-end? So there's different types of developer careers that you need to investigate and learn before making the decision to commit to a boot camp.
So that can be quite tough, though, because if you're new to development, you're not really sure what front-end is, what back-end is, And design, obviously, we understand that. And normally people will have a natural movement towards design or something more artistic. But the front end and the back end is a bit confusing. Can you explain a little bit more about the differences between those two?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think to answer your question, it's really hard to just kind of figure stuff out without having tried it. And my recommendation for prospective students is to really try both. Go and learn, for front end, you can learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript for a week. Try that out. Play around with browsers, play around with the user interface, see if you like it. And for some types of personalities, it can be really frustrating dealing with CSS and HTML. And the types of thinking that is required for a front-end dev is very different to back-end dev. Back-end devs are more data structures oriented, more object-oriented design. There's a lot of different types of things you need to learn to be a back-end dev. And I'd also recommend trying that out for a week and pick up a book in Python, pick up a book or in Ruby, and learn about how to build a good back end just for a week on your own, test it out, see if you like that kind of problem solving. I think in general, it's more of a personality that drives you towards one or the other.
Okay, great. And I like that. And there are a few online courses that people can do for a week or so, sign up for a month and do some front end stuff, which is like JavaScript, or back end stuff, something like Ruby or .NET, and just to see which one they enjoy more. So that's really good advice. But the other issue is finances. Like, these boot camps aren't cheap. What is your advice on finances?
Yeah, it's tough. And, you know, to go from a good paying job, leaving that, and then spending 5 figures, $10,000 on a 10-week program is a very, very big decision to make. And it's not a light decision either. So before you commit to that, do your research. And once you commit to it, then there are a couple of options you can look at to finance these types of programs. First is talk to your school that you're applying to. Oftentimes they have partners with lending institutions, or they have tuition reimbursements or tuition payment plans. And then finally at Switch, we're also partnering with a couple of lenders in the US to offer private loans for these types of programs. So there are a couple of different ways to finance them, but you should also consider it as an investment and look at it from an investment standpoint. What will this $10,000 investment get you 5 years from now? Are you able to pay it off? Are you able to get that job that will help you pay it off? And that return on investment type of question will really help guide you towards making a decision, I think.
Yeah. And one of the decisions for you, I think you said, was that the investment into the bootcamp was far less than the investment into further education at a university or college.
Oh yeah, it's much less than a master's program. A master's degree would have cost me, let's say, a 2-year program at a private institution would have cost me $80,000 probably for 2 years. Whereas I went to boot camp, I learned a very specific niche and specialized skill, which was Ruby on Rails, and that got me the job that I wanted afterwards, which was in web development. So there are 2 different options, and you should consider graduate school. It's got its pros and cons. You should also consider boot camp. It's also got its pros and cons.
Yeah, and I think we'll get into that a bit later as well. So that's a really good conversation. One of the big questions, though, that I think a lot of students will come up against is Ruby on Rails or Node.js or some JavaScript framework or .NET. So at FireBootCamp, we are teaching the .NET stack, but most boot camps are teaching Ruby on Rails. So can you tell us why? Why is it so lopsided towards Ruby on Rails as opposed to every other programming language?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm happy to see more .NET programs come up in Australia or in the US. It's quite lopsided right now, actually. I think almost 60 to 70% of the programs are in Ruby on Rails, which is quite astounding given that there's so many technologies out there. And to answer the question of why, I think you have to look at the history of boot camps and how it got started. And a couple of years ago, Dev Bootcamp pioneered the movement with Ruby on Rails. And that kind of spread out all around the country. People realized it was effective. People realized that Ruby was relatively easy to teach. So it's relatively easy to train someone to be a Ruby and Rails dev versus a .NET dev, for example. So that really led to the whole proliferation of Ruby on Rails. And add on top of that, there was a huge demand for Rails developers, especially in web development in the US. So those two things combined led to the proliferation of Ruby bootcamps. But definitely in the future, I think there are going to be more other types.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I'll give you our perspective at FireBootCamp. And I think if you learn the Ruby on Rails stack, there's a huge demand in the startup scene for that. And I think if that's the path you want to go down, the startup scene, then Ruby on Rails is a really good option for you. If you want to go more enterprise, though, so work in big business, banks, financial institutions, then the .NET stack is much more prominent in those type of businesses. So really, I think part of the decision you need to make when you decide on the language to choose is, do I want to go down the open source, the startup stack, or do I want to go down the enterprise business way? And that really helps you choose which language to go with. Because at the end of the day, I think the language you go with, they're all very good, but it's where you want to go with your career. Would you agree, Jonathan?
Absolutely. I think the companies that use Ruby on Rails are very different to companies that use .NET. And like you said, mostly enterprise companies, banks, large corporations, Dell, HP, those guys, they use .NET, whereas the smaller startups use Ruby on Rails or Python and Django and some of these open source frameworks. And there are pros and cons to working at each different types of companies. There are definitely pros to working at a large enterprise company, and then there are definitely pros to working at a smaller startup. And you have to ask yourself, what do you want out of a technology career? And that'll help you guide which path you want to take.
Yeah, so that is a really critical question a potential student has to ask themselves. Where do I see my career path going? Because once you lock yourself into one of those, I think the job opportunities just present themselves on one of those paths. So another challenge is really just getting through the school itself. I mean, they're very exciting when you look at them. A lot of them promise some great outcomes, but you don't get that for free. Number one is you pay a cost, you pay a price, which is the tuition price. But the other one is a personal cost and sacrifice that you need to make. Tell us a bit more about that personal cost of boot camps.
Oh, definitely. It's a huge commitment. It's a lot of money involved, and it's a lot of stress. And there's certainly some schools that are better than others, so it's a huge decision as to which school to attend. And from a personal cost standpoint, what you're really risking is you don't really know what the outcome is going to be after a boot camp. You're not guaranteed a job per se. Even though a lot of the schools say 95% placement rate or 99% placement rate, don't be misled by those numbers. The boot camp process is not a magic button. You don't just press it and you get a job. You have to really put in a lot of effort. Be prepared to go through stressful times. Be prepared to work long hours. Really immerse yourself in the education in order to be able to compete for that job at the end. So from a personal standpoint, it's the emotional and intellectual investment that you need to make and be prepared to make in order to be successful. And that's on top of the $10,000, $12,000 that you spend.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I just think that when someone goes into a boot camp, they really need to commit their life to the boot camp for that 12-week period or 10-week period. So they kind of need to tell their families, you know what, for the next 3 months, I am committed to this boot camp. I'm not going to go out much. I'm not going to be doing some of the things I used to do, because you want to utilize that time with those mentors and those classmates as efficiently as possible. And I just think that we just had a boot camp just start up this week. And I always do a talk at the beginning of the boot camp to all of the students. And I always say to them, because most of them want to get a job in the industry, or they want to change careers, or they want to advance their career. And I always say to them, this boot camp is not the the silver bullet that's going to change your life. What will change your life is your attitude and the investment that you put into it over the next 12 weeks. So we create an environment for you that gives you the best possible opportunity to fulfill the goals you have. But if you don't put the effort in the next 12 weeks, it's not going to change anything in your life. And I kind of give that speech all the time, and you can see as the boot camp goes on how different people react to that. But I really do believe that the boot camps are an environment where you can make a change in your career. But at the end of the day, it's all up to you and how much effort you can put into that during that time.
Absolutely. A lot of students and prospective students I talk to, I usually tell them input equals output. What you put in is what you get. And it's important for a prospective student to really understand that it will require a lot of work in order to really transform their career and transform their lives. You're not going to be spoon-fed in one of these programs.
Yeah. Yes, you definitely won't be. But you will be in an environment where you can rapidly learn these techniques if you put the effort in. So let's move on. There has been a huge or very sharp rise in boot camps over the last couple of years. And that growth has been kind of exponential. And can you explain to us why? Like, why have there been so many boot camps, so many students put through these boot camps, and such a good success rate, I guess? The reason they're doing well is because they're successful. Why do you think this perfect storm has been created?
Yeah. To give a couple of statistics about that, there's almost 6,000 bootcamp graduates in the US this year, and that's up almost 3 times from last year. So these bootcamps are growing year over year, 2-3 times. And the main reason for this is, there are 2 reasons. One is the demand for developers is skyrocketing in the US, and around the world for that matter. And then 2, the demand for people who want to switch careers into a tech career is also really high. And so at the middle, you have the boot camp that kind of matches the supply of these students who want to learn programming with these jobs. And hopefully they place these students with the jobs.
Yeah, yeah. And you did mention to me earlier that you think one of the reasons as well is just pure capitalism. I mean, they're very profitable for these boot camp companies.
Absolutely. The boot camps are very profitable, and the margins are great. And one thing that I've observed, and that is a result of this, is that because it's such a low barrier to entry, it's so easy to set up shop to teach. What results from that is there are often boot camps that are not so good. And that's one thing that I've noticed around the country is sometimes the curriculum is not as well thought out as it should be, purely because it's so easy to get into the space and it's so lucrative that it attracts a lot of different people. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons actually that Switch evolved was we wanted to offer third-party transparent reviews so that students can see what the good schools are, students can figure out what the bad schools are to avoid, and hopefully get matched with the right school. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of money in this industry, and it's very lucrative. So we've seen a lot of that growth because of that.
And there's a positive and negative to that. The positive is that they're doing great things, some of these boot camps, and because it's profitable, good people are coming into the industry, and they're really helping students out. But the negative side is that anyone can really get into it, and you really need to choose your boot camp wisely. And just from a personal perspective, with FireBootCamp, we are actually .NET developers. We have a consulting company, and this is an extension of our business to train developers. And a lot of the guys who teach at FireBootCamp are also developers working on large-scale projects. And for us, it's kind of like a point of difference, Jonathan. Like we say, well, we live and breathe development, and then the boot camp is something that we put all our energy into to replicate ourselves. And that's a really nice story to tell. But not all boot camps have a similar story. And I would say to people, when they look at a boot camp, look at the founders, look at the people behind it, because they're really the people who are going to set the culture of the boot camp and the level of training. And it's harder to find out this for a potential student, but you need to do that investigation. And hopefully switchup.org is going to help students find out this background information. It's a bit harder to get an understanding of, because I think that'll really help people choose the right bootcamp for them.
Yeah, I think you've hit on a good point there. It's really the founders who set the culture and tone of the bootcamp. And if you were to apply to a bootcamp, highly strongly recommend you to talk to the instructors and the founders and get a sense of their personalities, because that really trickles down into the rest of the curriculum and the rest of the bootcamp program. And Switch hopefully offers some of that information we offer Q&As with founders, Q&As with students, as well as reviews that really, hopefully, if you consider all of these different perspectives, you can start to get a sense of the culture. But in my opinion, nothing beats sitting down with someone at the school over a cup of coffee and just asking lots and lots of questions. I think that face-to-face interaction is really worth its weight in gold. So I wouldn't hesitate to reach out to these people and say, hey, look, I'm interested. Would you be interested in a cup of coffee? And ask them a bunch of questions about the program. And people in this industry are really friendly about that. So definitely don't be shy.
Yeah, good. So I want to go back. I was just thinking as you were talking, go back to something you mentioned before, and that is around the recruitment side. Because with boot camps, there's a lot of stats going around, with some boot camps saying they have 95% success rate in the first 3 months of students getting hired. Can you tell us a little bit more about those stats? Because sometimes those stats can be a little bit misleading.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to talk about that. And one of the main problems with these high placement rate stats is that it confuses people and makes them think they're entitled to a job. And then they go to a boot camp and they don't expect to put the hard work in. And that's really not very good for the industry. It's not good for the school. It's not good for the employers. It's not good for the students. So that's one issue. The other issue is there isn't standardization of these numbers. And the way people define hiring rate varies tremendously across the industry. Do you count part-time jobs? Do you count contract jobs? Do you count jobs that are not quite what you were intending to get? And so these statistics are often, a little bit off target, and I wouldn't kind of just rely on them entirely. I would strongly recommend that you do the research independently, go onto job sites, start looking at different jobs, see if there's a demand, talk to employers, and see what the demand is in that particular geographical area. Because it varies by region too. In Texas, there might be a lot of jobs, and the placement rates are going to stay high for a long time. In California, it might be flooded with Ruby on Rails developers. And in fact, I think, going back to the point of a lot of Ruby on Rails bootcamps, I think we're almost at the point where junior Ruby on Rails developers have matched the demand for junior Ruby on Rails developers on the job side. So I see the industry moving towards other stacks like .NET, like Python, mobile. There's more room for growth in other tech stacks. But with Ruby on Rails, it's starting to get quite competitive from what I've seen in a couple of cities.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And you mentioned before that in your experience, when you left a few years ago, you got a job relatively easily. I mean, I know you worked really hard for that, but you got a job. But today, you might find it a bit harder to get a job that's equivalent in Ruby just because of the amount of graduates coming out.
Yeah, it's definitely harder these days. And that's not to say that the bootcamp model doesn't work. I mean, most jobs and most markets are competitive. So you just have to be prepared as a prospective student to compete with other prospective alumni of bootcamp. And you have to win that job. You have to go in with the mentality that you want to be the best developer in your class so that you can perform the best in the interview and win that job. And that's the mentality that you have to go in with, is be prepared to work hard and be prepared to overcome a lot of challenges.
Yep. And in saying that, I think it's really important that potential students understand that going to a boot camp doesn't guarantee you a job. I think everyone knows that. But really, when you leave the boot camp, you still have to have good interview technique. You still have to have those skills that employers are looking for. And although a lot of the boot camps help you with that, they help you present, And at Fire Bootcamp, we definitely help with presentation skills and working with clients and that kind of thing. And I think that that's really important, that at the end of the process, the bootcamp might set you up with interviews and get you opportunities, but you've still got to, close the deal yourself. You've still got to present yourself. You've still got to, and those skills, good boot camps will help you with. And so I think that's a really good point. And that also comes down to salaries. So in your experience, what are the kind of salaries that graduates are receiving after leaving boot camps?
Yeah, that's quite a complicated question, and it depends a lot on your prior work experience, what boot camp you're attending, and what type of technology you're applying, what type of technology you're working in. And the salaries vary tremendously. I've seen anything from $40,000 to $130,000 from some of these boot camps. And the guy who's making $130,000 a year is the guy who already knew how to program before, but upgraded his skill set to learn a new technology so he could then perform in that job better. And that's how you would score in the higher range. On the lower end, the 40 to 50 range, is really people who don't have much experience. And if you come in and you don't have much experience and you don't probably work as hard as other students, then you'll probably end up on the lower range. And it's not a bad thing. It'll help you get the foot in the door. It'll help you get work experience that you can put on a resume. And it's not a bad thing to take a smaller salary, learn, and then improve over time. So I wouldn't focus necessarily too much on the exact salary that you want to get. Focus on what technology you want to learn. Focus on what type of job you want and what you're passionate about. Because that's really what's going to help you be successful in your long-term career. Not just the immediate salary that you're going to get, but how much fun you're going to be having in your job. Yes, I think is more important than the actual salary.
Yeah. No, that's good advice. So, Jonathan, how would you compare getting a university degree to going to a boot camp? And I guess there's a few different scenarios that people may find themselves in. I mean, is one better than the other?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And I think the more apples to apples comparison is the choice between a boot camp and a graduate degree. I think a lot of people who are working are facing that decision that they're making. And for me, from my personal perspective, I chose the boot camp because it was cheaper, it was more affordable, and it was a shorter time period. That being said, graduate school and a master's degree has its benefits, and you really need to examine the pros and cons. So I see a lot of people in the grad school versus boot camp situation. I see also some people in the undergrad versus boot camp situation. One of the mentees I talked to at Switch is just a person in high school, and he's wondering, why should I spend $200,000 and get a CS degree and spend 4 years when I could spend $10,000 learning Python and potentially start at a job with the same salary as the guy who went to undergrad? And this I find quite fascinating because a lot of people can't afford college anymore. And last year in the US, I think the average price of tuition for college was somewhere in the $25,000 to $30,000 a year range. That's a hefty price tag for school, especially if it's over 4 years. That's 6 figures easily. So slowly over time, I hope and I think that more and more people will consider boot camps as a viable alternative. I think it's going to take a long time to get there just because of public perception issues and just because a lot of companies still have a minimum bachelor's degree requirement. And there's a lot of stigma associated with people who don't have college degrees. Yeah. And that being said, there's still a lot of value in a college degree. You get the whole social experience, you get a more well-rounded education. Whereas the boot camp really, it focuses on something so specific. You're going to miss out. If you don't go to a college, you're going to miss out on a lot of the stuff that college offers you, which goes back to my original point. I think the boot camp really, right now in the immediate future, is more of an alternative to graduate school and an alternative to professional training school rather than an alternative to college.
Yep. No, that's good advice. And we see that at FireBootCamp. A lot of people come to us out of university and they want to get a job and they're struggling because everyone wants experience. And so how do you get the experience if you just come out? And so a boot camp is a good fit for them. They spend 9 weeks with us in the boot camp, and then it gives them that experience to go on and get a job. So we find the same thing. And we do have quite a few that also come through with no experience. They're career switchers. So they might have been in a totally different industry, may not have a degree, and then they want to come and get into development, or might have a startup. And so that situation, we see people coming through as well, and for them it's very beneficial. But it is tougher. It is harder for someone without a degree in computer science or that kind of thing to go through a boot camp, but there's definitely ways of getting through it. Yeah. All right, so tell us about the type of people who do well at a boot camp, the personality type, and because I suspect that not everyone can just rock up to a boot camp and take advantage of that learning style.
Absolutely, it's very much a personality thing, and not everyone should go to boot camp, and not everyone needs to go to a boot camp to get a developer job. Some people might find that learning online, for example, is the most efficient way of getting to that skill level. And there's plenty of online courses, where some people really prefer the immersive, more social learning, and they learn better in groups, and they learn better with people around them, mentoring them. And that's really the type of people who should go for a boot camp. It's the people who want the immersion, people who want the mentorship, and people who want that human interaction and learn better when they're in a group in a more social environment. I think those types of people will fit better in a boot camp. And on top of that, to succeed in a boot camp, you have to have a lot of drive. You have to be very driven. You have to be very disciplined, because, like you said, it's not, no one's going to hold your hands at some of these schools. You got to push yourself. And if you're not prepared to push yourself, you're going to lag behind the rest of your classmates. So I think those two things, being driven and being interested in an immersive type of learning environment, those are the two key characteristics for a successful bootcamp student.
Yeah, no, I agree totally from what we've seen. So we're going to wrap this up pretty soon. But before we do, I just want to go through what kind of preparation do you think a student should go through? So they've chosen their boot camp, they're ready to go, but leading up to the boot camp, what should they do to prepare? Because going from zero learning about coding to 100% or 1000%, which is what a boot camp does, can be a shock to the system. How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, going from 0% to 100% is really hard to do in just 10 weeks. It's just really hard. And a lot of boot camps will offer pre-work for you, which means they give you a syllabus. And for the 6 weeks prior to the school, you work through the syllabus on your own before going to the school itself. And that time period before the school is really important. You have to make use of that time so you can get to 20%. So that when you enter a boot camp, you're at 20% and you're going from 20 to 100 rather than 0 to 100. So in terms of preparation work, oftentimes the schools will tell you to go online. There's Coursera, there's Treehouse, there's edX. There's tons of open courses online that you can go on. And there's tons of textbooks, tons of tutorials that you can try out. And from my experience and from what I've seen talking to schools and talking to students, is the most successful students are the ones who did the most preparation work beforehand. The ones who come in already familiar with things like for loops, familiar with basic data structures, familiar with basic HTML, and then they come in and they can really just shoot up that learning curve really fast.
Yeah, we found the same thing, and that's why I wanted to talk about this, and that is coming into a boot camp with zero knowledge. Most boot camps don't teach you from 0 to 20%. Because they're just not able to. But if you can learn that beforehand, and they'll cover that 0 to 20 very quickly, some of them, but if you can learn that beforehand, when you get in, you can ask better questions about that 0 to 20. But if you don't know it, then when you get in there, 20 to 40 is confusing because you don't understand the 0 to 20. And I've seen in the past students like that. And so, we have a program that we put students through, and we feel that they have a much better advantage of being successful when they do some pre-work and just get used to learning again. Some of them haven't learnt in a while, and doing tests and doing that kind of thing. So great advice, Jonathan. So look, I hope that a lot of anyone watching has learned a lot from you. I know it's really consolidated a lot of what I have thought about the industry over the last few years. But just tell us now, we've got a student here that's listening, and they're about to make a decision, or they're a little confused on which direction to go in. How can switchup.org help them make that decision?
Definitely. I think Switch really helps you with the end-to-end process of switching a career. I would call ourselves the TripAdvisor for career switching. And we're coming out with a quiz feature that helps you match with the right types of jobs and schools and programs that'll help you find that alternative path to the job that really suits you the most. And we're releasing that feature in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we have a couple of other things that would help you. We've got hundreds of reviews of schools on our site, so feel free to browse through them. And also feel free to contact the students who wrote the review and ask them for maybe a Skype call or a phone call, or talk to the instructors. Feel free to go on the site, read the content, and then contact the people who wrote them. And then finally, we also offer mentorship through our mentorship program, so just send us an email on the site. We also offer financial loans for those who need loans through our partner, which is Prosper, a peer-to-peer lending institution. So we're really the end-to-end, from the research of a school to applying to the school to getting a job at the end. We want to help you through that process with our content and with our technology. And hopefully you'll find switchup.org helpful. And like I said, we're still pretty much a startup at this stage, so we're very open to feedback from the community and to really helping improve our industry as a whole, and to bring this industry to the mainstream and promote this bootcamp and immersive learning to the general public.
Fantastic, fantastic. And, I think that there's no better person to speak about bootcamps than someone who's already been through one and experienced that as well. And one more question for you. That platform you're building, is that your skill set that you learned from the bootcamp that's building that platform?
Absolutely. I would not be able to build Switch if I hadn't gone through a bootcamp and I hadn't got that amazing job afterwards, which really helped me train and become a professional software developer. So I do credit my ability to create this website and create this web application from my bootcamp and from my work experience. And I really believe in hands-on learning and hands-on projects that helped me get to the point where I am now. So I'm definitely happy to talk to anyone who wants to learn more about bootcamps, and just shoot me an email on my website.
Yeah, so anyone who does want to get in contact with Jonathan, we'll have all his details and the link to switchup.org on the website. So I want to encourage you to go across there. Jonathan, thank you for just giving us everything today about what you know about how to choose the best bootcamp if someone is looking. I really appreciate that advice. And if anyone out there is looking for a bootcamp, FireBootCamp is a great place to start. It's .NET based. It's in Sydney, Australia. It's in Redmond in the US. And we're really excited about bootcamps like Jonathan is, and we wish you all the best in your future and the bootcamp that you choose in your career. And we really believe that coding or programming is one of the best career paths you can go down. So thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure talking with you.
All right, see you later.
Bye-bye.